Yeah. Who am I? Someone that's afraid to let go. You decide if you're ever gonna let me know. Yeah, suicide if you
Office administration. Today we'll be looking at office documents by no other than yours truly, the study prep guys. Chill, relax, and let's start. Rela Hatte. So first of all, let's take a look into what are travel documents to be exact. So there are several documents that are required when one goes on a business trip. Some are specifically for traveling while others are for business involved. Each document is required for a specific purpose and each important as the others. So there's no document that is more important than the other. All are equally important. And today we'll be looking at each document and their importance in relation to traveling today. So first, something that I really like to highlight a lot is that the documents that you really do need for travel are the passport, visa dash entry permit, the passenger ticket, and health certificates. This is inclusion of the international certificates of vaccination. This is prevalently important in around COVID time in the year 2020. Moving on, let's look at so as I said before, we have the passport. Passport, everyone knows that without a passport is a signification of your residency and stuff like that. So first of all, let's look at the other items or some things that you would need for business travel. So the first thing is the departure tax receipt or the airport tax receipt. You usually get this when you're booking your flight with agency or a flight agency. You usually receive this then. And baggage checks and boarding pass. They usually put a stamp on your luggage in order to show that you got this stamp from this and this airport and what's not. Immigration form, declaration forms, you also get this when you're now getting ready to actually travel. Moving on, something that let's look at some of the reasons for business travel, or why do we actually utilize these documents and why are they exactly so important. So the first document that we'll be looking at is the passport, and the first thing that comes into mind, it is identification. A passport is identification. It's who the person name is, what is their national status, and it shows a relevant information about the person. Could even be minute details like their eye color and what's not. And it also shows the permission aggregations to where you could actually travel to foreign countries, and also records exit from one country to another. And the second document that we have is a visa. And this is to signify eligibility to enter certain foreign countries. The example is the US and the UK. It shows if you're relegated to an immigrant or a non-immigrant. So that's the purpose of a visa. Let's look at some reasons for business travel. Continued, we will be looking at the two final documents, which is entry permit and the grant permission in whose passport is endorsed remain in a country for whose immigrants is officer it was obtained. You usually get this from an immigration officer. So you have to show this when you're now going into a new country. You have to show your entry permit. If you do not have an entry permit, you will get in a lot of trouble. And secondly, it also enables the immigration department to determine the number of persons entering the country. So it really helps in facilitating the amount of persons, influx of persons into the country. And the second document or the final document is the human certificate or international certificate of vaccination. And the main reason for this is to certify that the person in whose names they are issued has been vaccinated or revaccinated against certain diseases, chlorella and yellow fever. This document more than ever was very important in the 20th century with the induction of COVID 19 for some of you guys who lived through that very depression and very sad time. And secondly, it is also to ensure that the person entering the country is not at health risk to the population. They are merely functioning within the criteria that they have to keep this country safe, and they need to see the person personal health certificate and how they are doing on a minuscule level. An example of this is that, as I said before, the health certificate was prevalently important in around COVID times or COVID 19 within the year 2020. And you needed to show this because if you were found out of having like for example COVID-19, there would probably a lot of cases where they actually send you back to your home country in order to reduce the amount of health applications in that country that you're traveling into. So let's look at the passenger ticket. This is just final notes. This is just a document that you need to have to, and this is to enable that the person whose name the ticket is to travel to specify destinations. So you usually purchase a passenger ticket. You purchase this online. It could be through e-commerce means, or it could either be through manual means. So if you have a passenger ticket, it shows you and it tells you or enables you to travel to a specified destination at a particular time. And if you look into my last video, we did discuss a lot on documentations. And if you go back to that video, you will get a bigger understanding. So that's everything, guys. Subscribe to the Study Prep Guys Chill Zone. See you guys on a later video. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more videos on CSEC. Welcome to the Study Prep Guys Chill Zone. We'll be looking at a full course on CSEC types of office layout, presented by no other than the Study Prep Guys Chill Zone. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's start. So for the video, we'll be looking at ergonomics and the types of office layout, advantages of the types of office layouts, and the disadvantages of the office layouts. More so, we'll be looking into the advantages of ergonomics and what exactly is ergonomics to begin with. So ergonomics is basically changing the environment to suit people rather than people adapting to the environment. So it's basically changing the environment to make us feel comfortable. So whenever the term ergonomics is used, it is referring to comfortability. It's referring to I'm working comfortably instead of me having to adapt to the environment. Moving on, the advantages of ergonomics is very notable. So first of all, the environment is made safe and comfortable. That's like basically the main thing. Secondly, productivity is maximized since you could work better in an environment where you feel most comfortable. Stress levels reduce, quality of life is improved. People tend to be healthier, they feel more better generally. People can work comfortably for a longer period due to comfortability. More comfortable you feel in your work environment, the more willing and the more longer you can work. There is better interaction with the environment. Since you are working comfortably, you will be able to enjoy every aspect of the business. So let's look at some of the disadvantages of ergonomics. So first of all, it is very costly. In order to work comfortably, the business may have to invest huge sums of their money generally or their financial sector into making you feel comfortable. And another thing to note is that the work environment has to be changed all the time to suit you, because you might want to have the AC, you might want to install something new, and that costs a lot of money. And thirdly, the study of ergonomics takes time and money. It not only takes money, it takes a lot of time, because everyone has different tastes, and to study your needs and your wants takes a lot of time. Now let's look into types of office layout. There are mainly three types of office layout, but before we look into that, let's take a look at the definition. So office layout is a term used for the physical arrangement of the office, where the office furniture and office equipment are placed. It is generally the format of how the office is, and there are mainly three types of office layouts: enclosed, private, or cellular office. You could just say enclosed office, private office, or cellular office. All three of these terms can be used in any cases. It's still the same thing. We have the open plan or economy block office, and then we have the virtual office. To give you a general idea of what the enclosed office is, meaning that your work, this is usually for people who are in high standards and who usually are in their own places, their own office where they work privately. It's not that they're outside of business, but they have high positions and they usually have an office for themselves. The open plan office is what you find in everyday businesses, everyday office businesses, where you work alongside in your cubicle with the rest of your companions and the rest of your friends or the rest of your colleagues you work with, in a cubicle next to your colleagues and what's not. The virtual office, however, is you work in long distances from the business, generally speaking. So let's look at some of the advantages of an enclosed private or cellular office. So first of all, it is suitable for top level official because of the privacy it provides. As I said before, only top level officials operate within the capacity of a private cellular enclosed office. And secondly, it provides a better work environment in comparison to like an open plan office. So visitors are not a cause of distractions to others. Since you're working by yourselves, you don't that is not really much of a distraction. Moving on, we have the disadvantages of an enclosed office, private or cellular office. So first of all, it provides little flexibility in the arrangement of office furniture. That usually has to say where it is. It costs more than an open plan office due to ergonomics. Ergonomics comes a lot into play when we consider a cellular office. In case of emergency, help may not be immediately available. Since you're by yourself in your own office, no one might notice when you're sick, no one might notice if you got a heart attack and stuff like that. So that is one of the major disadvantage in this type of office. Moving on, let's look at the advantages of an open plan office. So first of all, it provides more flexibility for the arrangement of furniture and what's not. And secondly, encourage interaction of personnel. Since you are around your colleagues in a cubicle, you could interact with them better. And thirdly, it can accommodate greater number of staff in an enclosed area. In an area, it could provide a flexibility, and it could even open up spaces for a lot of staff members to work alongside each other together. Now let's look at the disadvantages of an open plan office. So first of all, it is not suitable for discussion of confidential matters. You cannot really say anything personal because everyone will hear you basically. It is bad for workers' health. You might not if somebody is contagious with a flu or something that is contagious, you may probably obtain it because like you're literally right next to them. And thirdly, it creates an impersonal space or impersonal atmosphere. You won't have the flexibility of staying in your own area where you feel comfortable. You have to work around people and you have to make yourself comfortable or fit into the environment, even if the environment is not so pleasant at times, or it is generally not pleasant. You still have to fit in somehow. So let's look into the virtual office now. So on some of the as I said before, the virtual office is where you are working away from the business. It is where you work remotely away from the business. So first of all, less time is wasted on commuting. Since you are working probably at home, you won't have time to communicate with your workers, and that gives you time to actually work more. And that comes into time where there may be greater work productivity since you're not talking to anyone within the staff or they're not making small talk to say you have more time to work, and that could lead to greater work productivity. And work hours are flexible. You could work anytime you feel like. You could be very flexible with that. And some of the major disadvantages of the virtual office is greater self-discipline is required. Since no one will be supervising you generally, you have to take that mantle up for yourself. And secondly, there is much less team spirit. Since you're working by yourself, you won't have the flexibility of working with a team. And thirdly, opportunities for mentoring are absent. You won't have someone to always be telling you what you have to do, and you may miss some mentoring opportunities, generally speaking, in this case. So that's everything, guys. Thank you for watching the video. Look at the Welcome back to the study prep, guys. Everyone, today we'll be looking at section 1, the nature of business. This is to deal with orally economics as it relates to the economical problem. So our unlimited needs and wants far exceeds the limited resources available to satisfy our needs and even wants. So scarcity is a very fundamental economic issue or problem. It's of having seemingly unlimited human wants in comparison to limited real world resources. It states that society has insufficient productive resources to fulfill all human wants and needs. Scarcity leads to the concept of choice, which is making a decision between several choices. Example, having to make choices at the grocery store. You can't really purchase everything within the store. However, you can purchase the things that you do need the most. So, what's economic or what is an economy? Because economics and economy is two very distinct things, and I will allow you to. Tell me your thoughts at the end of the video. But economy, this is any place or location where economical activity exists, i.e., consumers and producers interact. Economies also interact with government and the international sector. We have subsistent economy. This occurrence amongst early humans whose basic needs and wants are food, shelter, and clothing. These are called our primary needs. The needs of a village were satisfied from nature only, providing for themselves. This is also called direct production. This is wherein you interact with nature in itself to satisfy those primary needs such as food, clothing, and shelter. So, wherein the developmental strategies or development of economies, we introduce something called diversification or division of labor and specialization. Nomadic people settled to different areas such as around rivers. They began to specialize in different tasks. Over a period of time, we were introduced to the concept of specialization. Specialization. This is a focus of effort on one particular task or product. Within over a period of time, humans become specialized in different areas in order to increase productive levels. So specialization can exist in six different ways. By product, this could example in fishing, farming, poultry, or cattle, or by process, example oil extraction, refining, by product, lubrication, and gases. By form, example Microsoft software, tablet, cell phone, or Google. By industry, example tourism, transportation, agricultural, extractive. This could be extractive of different agricultural and agricultural products. By region, example northern region of Trinidad for Shivi, or by nation, example Trinidad's oil, Switzerland's chocolates, Germany's automobiles. So let's look at some advantages of specialization that relates to the overall economical activity. So less time to train a person performing one job. If one person doing a particular job, they get better at it. It becomes easy for them. Tools are less expensive because the jobs are less complex. Output or production is increased. It is repetitive. Everyone knows what they have to do. Machines can be used to speed up production. Efficiency is improved, time related. The skill of the workers improved through repetition. And we have subsidized product or lower costs. Disadvantage of specialization is cannot work for niche or small markets. Difficult to motivate workers doing repetitive tasks. They're doing it over and over again. It becomes monotonous and boring. Industrial action is easier to organize and more effective. Workers cannot be easily replaced. Machines allow for individual craftsmanship to be lost, can be disrupted in the chain of production if worker is ill or absent. Occupational mobility, unable to transfer skills learned other jobs. So you can't really move a lot of places. For example, if you're doing a work in one country, you might not be able to be flexible and work anywhere you like to go and work abroad. So we have that specialization. That's what specialization is in its most simplistic of senses. Let's look at the term barter now. And in simpler economies before the advent of money, bartering was used. So, bartering is a very simple concept. Its definition is the exchange of goods or services for other goods or services without using money. So, I give you a pen and you give me back a book, or I give you a car and you give me a truck. That's what the basic gist of it is. Let's look at disadvantage to bartering. A double coincidence of ones can only exchange if each party desires what the other party has. Rate of exchange could be difficult to be decided upon. Some goods are not divisible. Goods are bulky and difficult to transport. Store of value. Some goods are perishable and cannot be stored for a long time. So let's look at some basic terms and concept for business. So capital dash producer goods. These are tangible assets or goods that are used to produce other goods. Example, buildings, vehicles, stocks, raw materials. We have consumer goods. These are goods that are ultimately consumed rather than used in the production of another good. Final product. We have primary goods. These are raw materials, agriculture, fishing, farming. Or these are the goods that are utilized in production of consumer goods. You have consumer, that is everyone in the world basically. A person who purchases goods or services for personal use and plays a vital role in the economy. We have a free good, a good that is not scarce and available without limits. Example, air, desert, and water in the ocean. We have private good is defined in economies as item that yields positive benefits to people that it is exhaustible or it is excludable, i.e., its owners can exercise private property rights, preventing those who have not paid for it from using the good or consuming its benefits. This could be example of bread. We have public goods. These goods are non-exclusive, i.e., no one individual can exclude another individual from receiving its benefits. Example, roads and bridges. Everyone could utilize that good. We have merit goods. These are goods that, when used, contribute a benefit to the wider society. Example, education. We have demerit goods. These are goods are consumed have a negative impact on the wider society. Good example of this is cigarettes. Could even be alcohol. It could even be alcohol. You just add that right there. Alcohol could also be one. Or alcohol is a demerit good also in this case. We have labor, these the human and physical effort in production process. Labor refers to the human capacity to produce goods and services. We have a market. This is a mechanism which allows buyers and sellers to interact in their interest. Example, online buying, financial market, and commodity market. Then we have the term opportunity cost is the value of the loss incurred as a result of sacrifice of the second best option or the next best choice foregone. I didn't make a video on this separately. So organization, the provision and coordinates of the form's input to achieve the goals and objective of the form. We have a producer, a person that sacrifice human wants by the organization resource to produce goods and services. Profit, total revenue exceeds total cost. This is when after all expenses are deducted, you still have a good amount of money left back, and that money is considered to be a profit. Total cost of production exceeds total revenue. This occurs in situation wherein your expenses far exceeds the money left back, meaning that you don't have any money left back after the transaction have been made. Services, these are the intangible activities that are provided by human wants, example, banking, cleaning, insurance. So services are humans provide services. This could be in the form of internet services. It could be in a lot of services. These are intangible activities, meaning that you cannot touch it. You cannot. It's basically intangible. Tangible meaning that you could touch it. You could interact with it. Intangible meaning that you cannot really interact with it. Then we have the idea of direct services. A services that is incurred for their own sake. Example, haircut, repairs on a vehicle, and stuff like that. We have indirect services, services that is received along with benefiting from a direct service, or good example, delivery of pizza. That's indirect services. We have trade or exchange, the exchange of goods and services. From an example, international trade. Distinguish it from barter, which is the exchange of goods for goods. You have to make a sort of payments in the trade or exchange of goods through international agency. We have a commodity. This is a good that is traded, usually raw materials or primary agricultural products such as copper or coffee. You get a lot more bananas, yeast, and stuff like our other examples of that. We have enterprise, and I did had a recent comment that did give me some information about the difference between entrepreneurship and enterprise, and I am, because that is my mistake and I really do apologize for that. But let's look to the present right now. So I'd like to say this code to the audience. An enterprise, this could mean a business. This is used to describe an undertaking of an activity with some degree of difficulty or task. This undertaking has specific purpose such as monetary goals. Enterprise can also mean initiative, which is doing daring to do something new or different, challenging or risky. So enterprise could mean a business, but it's far more definitive than just the activity of or enterprise is far more than just being a business. It's far more. So that comment out there, I like to say that you have it is, yes, it is inclusive of land, labor, capital, and what's not, but that's not the overall definitive definition. So let's look at entrepreneurship, the practice of identifying a new innovative or opportunity, organizing the financing of the resources, and taking the risk in the hope of creating wealth. The entrepreneur is the individual who identifies the opportunity and risks the time and money to start to organize the new adventure. So entrepreneurship now, I like to say that back to the audience. Entrepreneurship, there's a big difference between entrepreneurship and enterprise. You are correct in saying that that person that made that comment in that video. But entrepreneurship now is solely the practice of identifying a new opportunity. But enterprise is far more than just that. So trade, it's a very simplistic definition for trade because this is the process of buying and selling goods now. Business engage in trade to make a profit. You buy and then you sell a good at a higher price in order to make a profit. That is what goes on substantially in every economical country and even every economy around the world. Trading is very prevalent. So, guys, this is everything for the study prep guide today on this video. So it's nice to be back with you today on this video. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. And this is section one, the nature of business, early economics. This is all you need to know for to have a basic understanding of what economics truly is. So thank you. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. See you on the next video. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Study Prep Guys channel. Today we're looking at the development of money. This will be lecture 2 on CSEC, the 8 principles of CSEC, I would like to call it. We'll be looking at lecture 2 now, the development of money. So, money is a commonly accepted instrument of or medium of exchange. This could be in the form of coins, banknotes, paper notes. Minority of us already know that money what money is. We've seen examples, we use it in everyday life. It's not something that is uncommon to us. We know about money. It's not something we know. We have it, we use it. It is a medium of exchange. It is a store of value. It serves on all of those categories. So let's look at more than just what money is. Let's look at the history of money and its relevance as relates to that area. So the history of money. So first of all, due to the bartering systems, the bartering systems were sometimes not fair. So the bartering system was sometimes not fair. In the terms of exchange, the bartering system was sometimes unfair. It had a lot of drawbacks and not a lot of positives. It had a bit of positives, but not so much again. It was it was inadequate. It was not the best choice of option. So due to the drawbacks of the bartering system, it led to development of paper money, as we would like to call it. This is an example of paper, but paper money is more substantiative. So traditionally, cowrie shells, cattle salt, and sugar were used as money, but the medium of exchange was not effective enough. For example, um, in terms of transportation, if you were using, like for example, sugar or salt for as a medium of exchange, it would be some substantiatively difficult. So that was out of the question. Then precious metals were used such as silver and gold, but it became burdensome and heavy. Carrying a large stock of gold or diamond these or silver, it could be heavy, and the transportation and the lucidity or the lucrative nature of these medium of exchange were not effective. We needed something better. The goldsmiths kept the gold while issuing receipts to precious metal owners to represent the value of gold owned. Then the owner would present the receipt when the gold was required. The bearer of the receipt would be paid the gold. Goldsmiths started using smaller denominations such as $10 and $5, and that really gave rise to the idea of actually putting a certain amount of, for example, gold coins would be substantiatively, more expensive than silver or even copper coins, and that is how we developed that ladder of value as we have today with the different forms of lucrative paper money we have in today's society. So new now receipts became a representation of money. Goldsmith became bankers, and the amount of money exceeded the amount of gold or silver in reserve due to loans being given out, which led to greater economical activity. Central banks took over the issuing of monies to stabilize the system. And you might be asking, what is the central bank? There is a major difference between central banks, commercial banks, right? Central and commercial banks, you could probably take a pin, slice it through, and there is a very much deviation when it comes back down to that. So, what are some of the characteristics of money? So, it is generally acceptable by society. Society does accept it as a medium of exchange. It is lucrative. It is, you could carry it wherever you go. We have credit notes now, we have e commerce, electronic transfer, and all of these advanced economical means of exchange in today's society now. So, it is relatively scarce, meaning that we do not have too much of it. So, it still has value now. So, it is easily divisible, homologous in nature, meaning that it's identical to each other. It is fairly durable and it is portable. These characteristics, all of these characteristics, could have not been represented in the case of the bartering system. So, due to the effectiveness, the lucidity, and lucrative nature of money and its scarcity value, and all of these other factors combined, it made it almost the perfect medium of exchange, and that's why we still use it in today's society. So, let's look at some of the functions of money. So some of the functions of money is a medium of exchange, as a unit of price or pricing, as a store of value, store for future use. Example, savings, means of deferred payment. It makes credit possible. So let's look at some of the terms associated with money. We have the first term we have off the bat is legal tender. So legal tender is a medium of payment recognized by a legal system to be valid for meeting a financial obligation. Paper currency and coins are common forms of legal tender in many countries, meaning that we utilize it to exchange goods, or we utilize it to purchase our essential goods and services. We did talk about premium, or we did talk about our primary needs in the last video: food, clothing, and shelter. And then we have, our secondary needs, which could be inclusive of like our wants. We do not necessarily need it to survive, but sometimes we need it for entertainment purposes such as social media and what's not. So let's look at this other term, which is a fiat. This is an official order or decree by someone in power. An emperor in the medieval period, I would like to call it by the name Bluetooth. He actually invented the concept of paper money. That I think it was around China. I could be incorrect, but he actually introduced the idea in itself to make, and he usually signed his decree on those paper slips, and that was how the introduction of money was actually initiated into the society. So let's look at limited legal tender now. This is money that is accepted as legal tender only to a certain limited limit. Example, coins, because of bulk. Coins could only be accepted because, for example, if you bring a million coins, they will not accept um, all 1 million of that coins due to the bulk of it in general. So coins are token money and legal tender up to a small amount, meaning that you can't have like 8 million in coins. It would be very much unsubstantiative, and they would not accept it. Let's look at some banknotes or paper money. This is fiat money and not valued to gold or silver. Let's look at bank deposits now. This is upon which checks can be drawn. Checks are not legal tender. The deposit is. So checks in itself is not legal tender. So let's look at near money, checks, credit card, debit cards, electronic transfer. These are not tangible money that you could hold in your hand. If you have a credit card, you will have to scan it and connect it to your account through via wireless connection to your bank account essentially, and that's how you could actually buy your goods and services without carrying physical money on hand. So let's look at medium of exchange, a commonly accepted form of payment for goods and services. We have coins, that is the forward medium of exchange. We have literal physical money, that is also another medium of exchange. Gold, medium of exchange, and all these other things are some medium of exchange. Let's look at the term representative money now. Money of no intrinsic value that is used as money to claim value. Legal tender money that has been accepted by law to be a medium of exchange. This could be in the form of gold, diamond, It's basically that in a nutshell. So a check is an order to the bank to make payments to the payee stated on it. That's what a check is. It could be on a paper. It is not literally physically the money at hand. It's so if I were to write a check, I would literally write it and say this and this amount, and then if I were to put it and show it to the bank, they will have a responsibility to pay the payee that amount. Let's look at credit cards dash debit cards. This allows the card holder to make payment by simply presenting the card to the seller. A credit card facility is actually a loan given to a customer, and thus it is to be repaid at interest. A credit card is it allows you to spend money that you essentially don't have. Um, so when you reach that card limit, you have to pay an interest to the amount of money that you actually spend, and that is how businesses, that's how banks, especially commercial banks, make money. A debit card is issued against the customer's account balance and it is therefore not a loan. So you could spend, so if you have $1 million in your bank and you want to make it into a debit card, that's your money. You're spending your money and you essentially don't have to pay back any interest. Let's look at a money order. This can be used to make payments locally or overseas as they are made at out in the currency in which they are to be paid. The payee will cash the money order at his bank. A money order is basically a tool to transfer money or make payments. Think of it as an alternative to a check. However, while checks and money orders can serve a similar function and they also look quite similar, there are some differences to consider. Unlike regular checks, money orders are prepaid. This means they are backed by large agencies or corporations instead of individuals, making them especially valuable because of the safety and reliability that they provide. So there's a big drastic difference when it comes back into the relation between the difference between a check and a money order. So when you're a check, sometimes you do not even need to have that money in your bank to sometimes make a check deposit. But when it comes back to a money order, it's already prepaid. So you don't have to think of paying back anything now. Let's look at a bill of exchange. This is used to pay for goods bought overseas on credit. It is an order in writing from an exporter drawer to an importer drawee, requesting payments of a certain sum of money at a fixed future date. The time period allowed is normally 3 months. So, um, so with the bill of exchange, it really coordinates back to imports. So if I am selling a certain products overseas and I'm selling it to someone probably in the US or probably in the Philippines. Let's use the Philippines for instance. And I sell that product or I sell a certain good to that person overseas. They have a time period to which they necessarily need to pay that sum. It may be 2 months, it may be 3 months. That's what a bill of exchange generally is. Then we have electronic transfer. This is a system used to transfer funds electronically rather than paper-based payment methods. Funds are transferred over a computer network and makes payments fast, safe, and easy. Examples of these include debit card transactions, remittances through companies such as the Western Union and money transfer. Those are some examples of electronic transfer. We have telebanking now. This system allows a bank customer to simply use the telephone to get his banking services done rather than visiting the bank. Services include checking account balances and transaction money operated a new account, transfer funds, etc. So let's look at the internet banking system now. This differs because telebanking you have to literally make the phone call. In relation to internet banking now, this differs from telebanking due to the fact that the internet is used to access the services. Customers can go online to view their balances and transaction history and transfer funds, etc. This is very much similar to electronic transfer, but it deviates a lot. So let's look at internet banking. This differs from telebanking in that the internet is used to access the same services. Customers can go online to view their balances and transaction history and transfer funds, etc. So it's very similar. And let's look at now electronic commerce or e-commerce, more popularly called e-commerce, is the buying and selling of goods and services using the internet. It allows for a full range of trading activities over the internet, such as advertising, placing orders, delivery, and making payments. So this is all introduction, or this will be lecture two on the development of money, the principle of business. So we'll take a close right there. Subscribe. Hit the next video to lecture three. See you guys on the next video. All right, welcome back to the study prep, guys. Everyone, today we'll be looking at lecture four under CSEC business. We'll be looking at forms of business organizations. That is what we'll be looking at for today. So let's look at some functions of a business. Let's look at what businesses are about and what are the functions. So the four major functions of a business is to produce goods and services, create jobs and training employees, purchase goods and services for resale, meaning that they resell the product, raise money by borrowing. So the objective of a business is very simple: to produce a stream of income, to create employment, security of employment, corporate social responsibility, and let me just add here, profit incentive. Profit incentive is also one of their major objectives. Let's look at the reasons why, or reason businesses are established. So starting a business is a lot of hard work that is of but therefore persons who decide to start a business must be ready to dedicate a lot of time and energy to its startup. It is also very costly, and therefore capital will have to be identified to inject into a business. Let's look at the reason for starting a business. From the one, financial independence. Some persons feel restricted financially with the income received from their jobs. Starting a business would give them the opportunity to be a successful business person and to achieve financial independence. So you might start a business because you don't want to be financially constrained in any manner. Let's look at being your own boss. You are able to make decisions about the directions and operations of the business, to use your skills and knowledge for yourself. So you might want to use that skill and knowledge acquired from your years of study of education for yourself. The skills, knowledge, and experience that you have acquired can be put to work for you. Self actualization or fulfillment. Owning and operating successful business will give a feeling of accomplishment. Number five, to create employment for relatives, friends, and community members. Businesses can assist in providing jobs for persons in communities with high levels of unemployment. So it might be that you just want to create a business for yourself to employ people within the community to make the community a better place. So let's look at forms of business organization. So there's a lot of business organizations such as sole trader partnership, private limited liability companies, public limited liability companies, multinational franchises, conglomerates, cooperatives, nationalized industries, local and municipal authorities, and we have government departments. So let's look at the private sector, the private and the public sector. Let's look at some of the characteristics of the private and public sector before anything else. So government control of factory productions on behalf of citizens, that is the public sector. Motive to produce services to citizens and consists of nationalized industries, executive agencies, local and municipal authorities, government departments, and public corporations. So the advantages, and when we mean public sector, we mainly mean government owned agencies. So advantages: government provides public goods that the private sector will not provide. Government provides welfare services to poor members of society. Government sets the control mechanism on place for the conduct of businesses. Let's look at some of the major disadvantage or disadvantageous aspects of this now. Governments can increase taxes to finance expenditure, inefficient use of state resources, because the government doesn't have a grasp entirely of the wants and needs of society. They do understand the primary needs of society, such as food, clothing, and shelter, but as it relates to the specific, they may not understand that entirely. So political interference in private sector that could cause even slow derangement syndrome of the economical stability and economical growth of the economy also. Let's look at the private sector. So private individuals or business or it's private persons, it is not state owned. They own the factory productions in the private sector, and their motive is to maximize profits. That's their overall main objective. And these consist of sole traders partnerships, public and private companies, multinationals, um, conglomerates, and franchises also. Let's look at some advantages of this. So it brings more competition and product variety to the market. It is increased use of technology and this to increase the production process. And technology is more cost effective than utilizing labor, and it provides investment and employment. Let's look at some disadvantages. Will only provide products that citizens can pay for, engages in the production of the merit goods once there is demand. So we have a lot to look at, and we'll close at the public and private sector characteristics. We look into the others in the playlist. Let's look at features of private sector and public sector. So ownership and control. Private citizens, individuals, and firms own the private sector. Public sector, this is state-owned, objective to make profits, and the public sector is to provide essential goods and services to the country. Source of capital. Private individuals and persons who choose to buy shares in enterprises, loans from banks. It could be from the family, friends, and even personal savings. The public sector usually comes from taxes, loans from government institutions, funding from donor agencies, like the UN and these other agencies. So we'll take a stop right there for now. And this is lecture 4. We'll continue lecture 4 in a later video. We will be looking at terms and concepts that are important, other terms and concepts. So we'll close right here. So let's continue our last class on the companies. We did talk a bit about public limited liability company, and we did talk about private limited company. So we're still continuing down the line of the legal procedures, or the documents that these companies must submit. So we're continuing now on the statements authorized, registered, or nominal capital. And this is the amount stated in the MOA, which is the maximum output which a company is authorized to raise. This is the amount of money that they could actually have at hand. So let's look at prospects now. So what exactly are prospects? So this is an invitation. So prospect is an invitation to the public to buy shares in a public company. It contains detailed information to enable investors to estimate its prospect. It is important that the public should not be misled. So the information in the prospect should be as accurate as possible. So let's look at the statutory declaration. The statutory declaration are commonly used to allow a person to declare something to be true for the purpose of satisfying one legal requirement or regulation, meaning that um, the, statu- the statutory declaration is the rights of an individual in a form so that they could actually have legal tenders in that business. Let's look at now the certification of incorporation. This is a legal document relating to the formation of a company or corporation. It is a license to form a corporation issued by state government. Its precise meaning depends upon the legal system which is to be used. And then we have one of the most important document is a certificate of trading. You can't really do business without this document. So out of every document, this is the most essential, we like to say. So it is a certificate issued by the registrar of companies to the public limited company to grant permission to commence its business. Without this document, you cannot commence businesses. You cannot commence your business. So the private limited company may begin trading after receiving a certificate of incorporation, but the public limited liability must issue a prospectus inviting the public to subscribe for shares before a certificate of trading is issued. And that data within the prospect also must be accurate. So let's look at some of the advantages of private limited companies. So a larger capital based on a sole trader or partnership, the company has continuity and thus can obtain loans easily. The company has a separate legal identity from ownership. Shareholders have limited liability. Let's look at some of the major disadvantages now. So first of all, you generally have more capital as in comparison to the sole trader or partnership generally. The company has a legal separate identity from ownership, the owner or the individual that made the business does not take any significant losses. The business exists as a separate entity on its own rights. So let's look at some of the disadvantages. Capital is limited since the membership is limited to 50%, so that is limited. Must file reports with the registrar of companies. Selling of share is restricted to the private grouping. This could be inclusive of family, friends, and what's not, people close to you. It is not inclusive of the public. So let's look at the advantages of a public limited company. It is easier to obtain financing. Shareholders have limited liability. Shares can be quoted on the stock exchange and sold to the public. Company able to grow and obtain economies of scale. Economies of scale meaning that you could leverage the price of your goods and services. It has a separate legal existence. Changes in shareholders and directors do not affect the continuity of the company. So let's look at the disadvantage now of the public limited company. The legal requirements may be costly and very time consuming because it takes a lot of time to register all of those documents, such prospects of these things take a lot of time. The accounts have to be made public because of large size. Decision making can take extremely long. Differences in opinion may develop between owners and directors. Loss of control of company if sufficient shares are obtained. You could even lose your business because people bought all the shares and you don't really have a lot of say when all your shares are bought exactly. These companies lack a personal element, so it's not one person. Everyone has a part of it. So you can't really definitively say this is the boss. So yes, we'll close right up to there. Our next video will be on multinational cooperations. So take us up right there. Subscribe guys. See you on the later video. Alright, this is a continuation of the last class for lecture 4. Alright, for now we'll be looking at terms and concept as relates back to the heading of forms of business organizations. We will be continuing this. Especially for this video, we will be taking a more substantive dive into some terms that you need to learn. So the first term is insolvent. This means you are unable to repay debts or you have gone bankrupt. The second term that you really need to know is liquidate also. And this usually occurs when a business sells off its assets to repay debts. We have limited liability. It means that he or she is not personally responsible for business debts and obligations of the corporations. Fourth, we have unlimited liability. This refers to legal obligations, general partners, and sole proprietors because they are liable for all business debts if the business can repay its liabilities. So the sole proprietors are the initiators of the business, right? The sole proprietors are the people those that creates the business, right? So if so everything really falls back on them. They are liable for the business failures. They are liable for everything. So if the business cannot repay debts, they're really responsible for that. That's why I mean unlimited liability. They are liable for all business debts if the business cannot repay its liabilities. So we'll be looking at the sole trader. So the sole trader is a single business owner. This person may employ several other persons to work in the business, but he has to make all decisions, acquire all the capital required and other resources needed for the business on its own. So let's look at some of the characteristics of the sole trader. So some of the essential characteristics of the sole trader, let's look at that. So first of all, he or she manages the business and may have the help of family and friends, and usually they have funds to make the business or keep the business flowing. He or she enjoys all the profits and bear all the risk. And thirdly, capital is limited since the savings of the owner funds the business. Personal contact with clients performs a variety of tasks related to business operations of the business since they don't really have anyone helping them except from their family and friends. They don't usually employ personnel. They don't usually even have the funding to actually pay those to employ persons. It's a small type of business in comparison to bigger businesses that we will be looking through. So this business is not incorporated, it is not given a separate identity, and therefore easy to set up. Examples: electrician, plumbers, small farmers, doctors, and lawyers. So, how is this formed? There are no legal formalities in setting up a business, a sole trader, except for the registration of a trade name of the acquisition of a license. For example, the license required for the sale of alcohol or for the sale of food items. So the advantages of the sole trader are very blatant since you don't have anyone really work with you. You could enjoy all the profits. It is easy to formate or easy to form. You have independence. The organizational structure is not complicated. You have personal control in decision making, personal service. You have secrecy and personal commitment to succeed. Let's look at some of the disadvantages, however. So some of the disadvantages is limited source of finance, lack of specialized staff. You don't really have much trained personnel, over reliance upon one's personal health and vigor, unlimited liability, lack of leisure time, and lack of technology, and you bear all the losses, all the risk, and even the losses. So if the business goes bankrupt, you will go bankrupt alongside it. So we'll take a close right here, and we'll be looking into partnerships next. So guys, see you on that video. See you guys later. Subscribe. All right, welcome back to the Secret Guys channel, everyone. We'll be looking at nationalized industries for this video. Let's look at the basic definition of what a nationalized industry actually is, and then we will discuss. So it says here, nationalized industries are forms which were once privately owned but have been taken over by the government. Um, in recent years, in especially in a country known as Guyana, there has been this country there has been this agency known as GPL. It was a light agency that supplied light to the economy, but since it was so prevalent, the government had to take over that industry and put it under their branches or their wings to see. So governments seek to nationalize the key industries. Let me just highlight that the key industries, that is the industries on which the government depends for the country's economical survival. For example, Trinidad's oil industries or bauxite in Jamaica. So if you find oil in a particular section of of a country, you can't you can't really even control that, to say honestly. You can't really even make you can't sell it. That will immediately come under the branch of the government, such as if you find oil in your backyard, you cannot utilize that oil. It will be purely government owned, incentivized, so you cannot really do anything in that case scenario. So let's look at the formation of that. So a company becomes nationalized when the government purchases all or the majority of shares in that company. Let's look at the management. Like state corporation, a board of government is appointed. The board reports to the line minister. The executive director heads the company. The audited accounting reports of these companies must be laid with the audit general of the government accounting firm. So let's look at the characteristics of nationalized industries. They are legal entities, that is to say, for number one, they are legal, they're not illegal. The state is the only shareholder, meaning that they buy everything from the business or they buy majority of everything. So it comes under their hands. They are managed by a board of directors that is appointed by the state. They could even use back the same person that used to manage the business or basically employ the person that used to own the business. See, let's look at some of the advantages of the nationalized industry or nationalized corporation or nationalized business. So the state has ownership and control, hence profit remains in the country. the company is in a better position to to service the needs of the community. For example, the funding of community project in education, sport, and a cultural project. Nationalization prevents private monopolies from being formed. Private monopolies is an issue because they benefit from economies of scale, and if they are the only producer of a good or service, they can set how they could set the price ceiling for that good or the total cost of that good. So, and this becomes an issue for governments because they can't really control private monopolies a lot. So they usually have to buy that monopoly or buy that business and bring it under their branch in order to make it to make the country safer and better in a generalized sense. Let's look at some of the disadvantages now of the nationalized industry now. Disadvantages, let me just put that in red for fun. So let's look at that. So there's relatively low salaries paid to the executive directors, and it may not attract the best expertise. So the industries may be a drain on the government's revenues, or it may be a drain to actually maintain it. And let's now look at state corporations. So, and these are independent organizations set up by the government to carry out a service. The government does not control the daily operations but can fix the overall strategy and nominate the board of directors. These are usually non-profit making, but in the long term, they may have to be self-financing. State corporations are used in the broadcasting field, transportation, power and telecommunication industries. State corporations can be a news media outlet or something like that, but in democratic countries, they usually don't have that. It's usually privately owned. So state corporations are formed by legislation, i.e., the passing of laws in parliament. For example, they may see a need for a cooperation in the aspect of tourism, and that will could form in that case scenario. Let's look at the management of the state corporation. So first of all, the government appoints board of directors or board of governors for a stipulated time period. An executive director is also appointed to the head of each organization. The executive director reports to the board of directors or directors, which is the same thing. So let's look at some of the characteristics of state corporations. So funding is mainly done by the state. So the state appoint auditors monitoring all accounting procedures. Annual accounting reports must be sent to the general auditor. The aim of the state is to not make a profit. It's not look at the government departments. So these include the government ministries, example, Ministry of Finance, Education. Ministers appointed of each ministry. These appointments are very important to the run of government. So we did cover off exactly what is a state corporation. Now we're looking at government departments. So let's look at local and the municipal authorities are, and these are government bodies which are run by elected local officials. Example, the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, KSAC in Jamaica. These bodies fulfill local needs and allow for more balanced local development. They carry out duties such as cleaning gullies and drains and fixing community roads. So local and the municipal authorities usually are responsible for the safeguarding and livelihoods of people within the community in general. So for the next video, we'll be looking into stakeholders and their role in business activities. So we'll take a stop right there, guys. Subscribe. See you on the next video. So welcome back to the study group, guys. Business. We'll be looking at conglomerates today for this video. And this is a group of unrelated companies, example, a restaurant, shoe store, a travel agency, etc., under one umbrella. A parent company owns a controlling stake which company which conducts business separately. An example of this in today's society as of now is, for example, you have Twitter and we have Tesla, we have all these different businesses operated on the Elon Musk. It's a lot of differentiating businesses, but all of them operate under a single umbrella. So a parent company owns a controlling stake in each company which conducts business separately. So even if they are differentiating businesses, conglomerates um, earn a lot of finance. The amount of money that they could actually obtain is by far greater than a private company. Public, it's greater by far because they have a lot of flexibility and the risk is spread over multiple companies and they benefit a lot from economies of scale also. So they are they have a lot of flexibility in that area. So it's easier to access financing due to asset base. As I said before, they have a lot of accessibility to those things in those categorical areas. So let's look at now some of the disadvantage of the conglomerates. So management can be difficult in some cases of the conglomerates. So management can sometimes be very difficult in some cases. Some businesses may increase the risk of the conglomerate because it is functioning under one branch. But even if it is functioning under one branch, if one aspect of a business is doing badly, it will affect a lot of other areas. So that is everything for the conglomerates. It's very simplistic. So let's look at what we consider to be a cooperative business. And these are business entities owned by their members who purchase shares to join them. So cooperatives is these are they usually don't have the profit. They usually don't have the profit motive. Even yeah, they do want to make money, yes, but that's not their main goals. They are usually established because of a specific need existing among a number of members who wish to acquire particular goods and services at reasonable cost. So let's look at the principles of cooperatives, some things that make you even eligible to join a cooperative. Let's look at the principles of cooperatives. Open membership. All persons over the age of 16 may join for a fee. So, a democratic controls governed by its own members who attend a general meeting where members elect a committee to run the cooperative. So, it's joined by people coming together, pooling resources together to meet a particular need or want. Let's look at limited interest and capital invested, low interest rate for members, meaning that they don't have to pay a lot for goods and services. And fourth, distribution of surplus. Surplus are distributed among members fairly, plowed back into business, expand and sometimes for healthcare or education. Let's look at the different types of cooperatives. Now, as it relates to the business, there's consumer cooperatives, producer cooperatives, financial cooperatives, services cooperatives, and even worker cooperatives. So, for example, members of credit union purchase shares in these entities in order to obtain loans at low interest rates. There are several types of cooperative, for example, retail/consumer cooperatives and purchaser cooperative. Shares invested in a retail cooperative are used to buy goods in bulk at a very low cost and then resold to members. Producer cooperatives may include a group of farmers who will obtain raw materials at a low cost. So profits are distributed among members, and the benefits of being part of a cooperative they are obtaining goods and services at low cost, and a guaranteed market as members are also consumers or customers. So these are some of the disadvantage of cooperatives. Listed below creates employment for members. Advantages of it: democratic management, meaning that you could have your voice heard, benefit from economies of scale, support services such as purchase and marketing for members, profit shared among members. Disadvantage: no. Limited capital input depending on the size of the cooperative or the credit union, may lack managerial expertise and membership because it's just a bunch of members and persons may be young or they may be unskilled in managing the overall business activities of the cooperative. And we'll not go farther than that. We'll take a close right here. We'll be looking at nationalized industries in the next video. Subscribe, guys. See you in the next video. Please share. Alright, welcome back to the Secret Guys channel, everyone. We'll be looking at nationalized industries for this video. Let's look at the basic definition of what a nationalized industry actually is, and then we will discuss. So it says here, nationalized industries are forms which were once privately owned but have been taken over by the government. Um, in recent years, in especially in a country known as Guyana, there has been this country, there has been this agency known as GPL. It was a light agency that supplied light to the economy, but since it was so prevalent, they actually had to the government had to take over that industry and put it on their branches or their wings to see. So governments seek to nationalize the key industries. Let me just highlight that the key industries, that is the industries on which the government depends for the country's economical survival. For example, Trinidad's oil industries or bauxite in Jamaica. So if you find oil in a particular section of of a country, you can't you can't really even control that, to say honestly. You can't really even make, you can't sell it. That will immediately come under the branch of the government, such as if you find oil in your backyard, you cannot utilize that oil. It will be purely government owned, incentivized, so you cannot really do anything in that case scenario. So let's look at the formation of that. So a company becomes nationalized when the government purchases all or the majority of shares in that company. Let's look at the management. Like state corporation, a board of government is appointed. The board reports to the line minister. The executive director heads the company. The audited accounting reports of these companies must be laid with the audit general of the government accounting firm. So let's look at the characteristics of nationalized industries. They are legal entities, that is to say, for number one, they are legal, they're not illegal. The state is the only shareholder, meaning that they buy everything from the business or they buy majority of everything. So it comes under their hands. They are managed by a board of directors that is appointed by the state. They could even use back the same person that used to manage the business or basically employ the person that used to own the business. See, let's look at some of the advantages of the nationalized industry or nationalized corporation or nationalized business. So the state has ownership and control, hence profit remains in the country. The company is in a better position to service the needs of the community. For example, the funding of community project in education, sport, and a cultural project. Nationalization prevents private monopolies from being formed. Private monopolies is an issue because they benefit from economies of scale, and if they are the only producer of a good or service, they can set how they could set the price ceiling for that good or the total cost of that good. So, and this becomes an issue for governments because they can't really control private monopolies a lot. So they usually have to buy that monopoly or buy that business and bring it under their branch in order to make it to make the country safer and better in a generalized sense. Let's look at some of the disadvantages now of the nationalized industry now. Disadvantages, let me just put that in red for fun. So let's look at that. So there's relatively low salaries paid to the executive directors, and it may not attract the best expertise. So the industries may be a drain on the government's revenues, or it may be a drain to actually maintain it. And let's now look at state corporations. So, and these are independent organizations set up by the government to carry out a service. The government does not control the daily operations but can fix the overall strategy and nominate the board of directors. These are usually non-profit making, but in the long term, they may have to be self-financing. State corporations are used in the broadcasting field, transportation, power and telecommunication industries. State corporations can be a news media outlet or something like that, but in democratic countries, they usually don't have that. It's usually privately owned. So state corporations are formed by legislation, i.e., the passing of laws in parliament. For example, they may see a need for a corporation in the aspect of tourism, and that will could form in that case scenario. Let's look at the management of the state corporation. So, first of all, the government appoints board of directors or board of governors for a stipulated time period. An executive director is also appointed to the head of each organization. The executive director reports the board of directors or directors, which is the same thing. So, let's look at some of the characteristics of state corporations. So, funding is mainly done by the state. So the state appoint auditors monitoring all accounting procedures. Annual accounting reports must be sent to the general auditor. The aim of the state is to not make a profit. It's not look at the government departments. So these include the government ministries, example, Ministry of Finance and Education. A minister is appointed each change of each ministry. These appointments are very important to the run of government. So we did cover off exactly what is a state corporation. Now we're looking at government departments. So let's look at local and the municipal authorities are, and these are government bodies which are run by elected local officials. Example, the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, KSAC in Jamaica. These bodies fulfill local needs and allow for more balanced local development. They carry out duties such as cleaning gullies and drains and fixing community roads. So, local and the municipal authorities usually are responsible for the safeguarding and livelihoods of people within the community in general. So, for the next video, we'll be looking into stakeholders and their role in business activities. So, we'll take a stop right there, guys. Subscribe. See you on the next video. Alright guys, welcome back to the Study Prep Guys channel. This is the continuation of the Study Prep Guys series, the Study Prep Guys notes. So we'll deal with economies, the market structure of monopolies. It is a very important in CSEC. We are looking at monopolies. In this course, we're looking at a monopolistic market structure, assumption of a monopoly, how monopolies are created, monopolies and the barriers to entry, some arguments for monopoly and some arguments against monopoly. We'll be looking through all of this through a 3 video series. So let's look at the basic definition of a monopolistic market structure. A monopolistic market structure can be defined as having only one seller who sells a product or service which is not offered by anyone else. Thus, the word mono meaning singular. Anytime you hear the word mono, that means singularity. That means it's single in senses. So let's look at some of the assumptions of a monopoly that are either correct either are completely incorrect or usually are misrepresented. It says here if the monopoly does not violate the legal rights of the consumers, the government will not intervene. That is a wrong assumption. In the situation someone does violate the legal rights of consumers, the government will intervene. This could be in the case of the monopolistic seller selling the price of his or her product at excessively high prices. In that case, the government will intervene and do something called a price ceiling. A price ceiling is a case scenario wherein the government sets a particular price for that good or service so that it could meet the average income of the consumer. So there are many buyers within the market, but only one seller, the monopolist. This is a correct assumption. There are many buyers who want to get into the market, but they find it usually difficult to get into a monopolistic market structure. Other firms find it very difficult to enter the market, enabling the monopolist to make substantial profits in both the short and long term. It is correct in a sense, but it's not totally correct. Long term, no. Short term, yes. Over time, with the selling of that product, it will either be copied or pre-manufactured. We see that in communist countries such as China. We see that in a lot of communist countries, usually China, 90%, I would say 98% of the time, China usually remanufacture that good and usually sell it at lower prices and what's not. In the short term, yes, but when you're looking at enabling from the long term perspective, usually no, it is usually not in that regards. And yes, the monopolist does aim to maximize his or her profits in the short term for the amount of time until or either the good is remanufactured. A big benefit of the monopolistic market structure is economies of scale. They can sell the good at a certain price they want to sell it, meaning that they could actually be flexible in how they sell a good because of its necessity. So, how monopolies are created? By law, by competition, by forming a cartel, by ownership of scarce resources. So, usually in the case of crude oil, we use the case of crude oil. Within the case of crude oil, they may need to sell the good product or service due to the sheer scarcity and vulnerability and even competition of the good in its entirety by forming a cartel. What do we mean by cartel? So, a cartel is created when the individual firms in an industry make an agreement to restrict their output to some agreed amounts and to charge a common price. That is what we call the price ceiling. Usually in economics, we'll use the term quota. We can't sell a certain variety or a certain amount of that product. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, is a form of cartel. The exportation of natural gases or crude oil, that is an OPEC industry. Since it is an OPEC industry, we that is one way of which it could be farmed, and certain amount of that product or oil could be exported at a particular time. A certain amount of tons will be exported. So from this class, you could basically summarize a couple of major points. So first of all, a monopolistic market structure can be defined as having only one seller who sells a product or service which is not offered by anyone else. Secondly, other firms find it very difficult to enter the market, but only one seller, the monopolist. Thirdly, monopolies are formed by law, competition, etc. Now we will close off with some question for the viewership. You could type your thoughts in the comments down below. So these are some of you could test your understanding. You could type in the comment below. You could directly message it to me, or it's not. The link is in the bio below. So discuss three reasons why monopolies are formed. And for the second question, is the following statement true or false? I'll think write it right here. I'll just say it. Monopolies are under constant pressure from their competitors. You could type in the comments below if that statement is true or false. I repeat it one more time. Monopolies are under constant pressure from their competitors. So you could type either true or false in the comments below. So guys, see you on the next video. We will be now looking onto monopolistic competition or perfect competition, I would like to say it in the next video. Playlist below. Subscribe. You could check out the studyprepguide.com on Patreon, the Facebook group chat, or you could check me out on Discord at the Discord link, or you could actually personally contact me for one-on-one questions related to CSEC. See you guys on the later video. Welcome to the Study Prep Guys full course on CSEC with ambient rain and thunder for office administration and social studies. Welcome again. Chill, relax, and let's start. So before anything else, just chill and relax as you rest or you lay down in your room as you listen to the full audiobook for CSEC Office Administration and Social Studies. So the first question that we'll be looking at is CSEC May-June on the year 2011, Paper 2. It's in relation to what are some of the characteristics or what are the types of leaders. The first type of leader we'll be looking at is democratic. You might be asking the question, what are some of the key characteristics or what is a democratic leader to begin with? A democratic leader is someone that does not make their own decisions. They listen to the opinions of others in the business and they make their decision based off of that information. So the first major characteristics of a democratic leader is that they allow the opinions of others in the organization. And second is likewise they make decisions based on those opinions. So a democratic leader is very different from something we consider to be an autocratic leader or an authoritarian leader. So the autocratic leader does not take the opinions of others. So the democratic and authoritative leader are totally different. And when the authoritarian leader makes a decision, it is final. No one could question them, and no one has a right to give their opinions. And to be honest, it's a very sad situation. Won't you think so? Moving on, we have a very interesting question which says define the term feasibility study. And this is a question taken from the year 2011 also, and let's answer it. So a feasibility study is a study of how a financial market is. It's basically a study of how the markets are. That's what a feasibility study actually is. It's mainly aimed at economical markets and figuring out how they are. It could be in the form of how many cash they're making. It could be in the form of how they're doing, if they're doing well, if they're doing bad, if they are breaking even. All of these terms, break it even, we'll look at that in the later video. But for now, you understand the basic concept of what is a feasibility study. Is a study prep, guys. Chill zone, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's start. This will be a basic class on the basic introductory terms in a way, and we'll not just look at it, we will be applying those terms and working past papers. So let's start. So let's look at some very basic terms. I cannot cover everything in this video, but we will make a playlist on every term that you need to know. So let's look at the introduction of terms. So the first term that I would like to look at for our first class officially is logistics. And what exactly are logistics? Logistics is the detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. Logistics refers to the time that you spend calculating the profit to loss ratio. You might want to know how much stocks you have. You might want to know how many more stocks do you need, and all of these things. That's what logistics basically is. It's the complex inner working of an organization. It's basically those things that goes on behind the scenes that we don't usually see. So if you have that in mind, we usually see logistics in every business. As a matter of fact, we have an accountant who tallies the amount of money we make. Essentially, that's logistics. Logistics is just very basic. It is the complex inner workings of the organization. So that's everything for logistics. Now let's look at the question for CSEC 2018 May-June. So it says here, this is a question on May-June for 2018 for CSEC, Principle of Business, and this could be in the case of OA, Office Administration also. So the question asks, what are two factors that can affect the supply of labor in a business? The first factor is logistics. And why you might ask? Because you usually have to give an explanation at the end of these things. Just saying logistics is not enough. Since logistics assists in the efficiency of the business, and thus without it the business will be unable to function properly. Logistics help the business to be efficient, and if we don't have logistics in place, the business will be less efficient because we won't know how many profits we are making, how many stocks we have, and if we have to restock. We won't be able to answer these basic questions. Logistics is of the utmost importance. And secondly, we have the type of business. The type of business such as sole trader, private and public limited business, etc. The size of the business, depending on the sizability of the business, you will be able to employ a certain amount of people. Obviously, if you're a small business, you won't be able to supply a lot of workers. You won't be able to supply a lot of labor. So that's basic. So the bigger the business, the more amount of workers that you could have. The smaller the business, the less amount of workers you could have. Now let's move on to the factors of production. We'll be looking at three major factors of production in this class: land, labor, and capital. And we'll also be looking at the rewards for the factors of production. Now let's take a look at the fourth factor of production, which is land. And you might be asking, what is the factor of production? The factors of production are those things that are needed in order for production to take place, essentially. And we have majorly around three. We're looking at the three main factor of production. Land. So let's look at land to begin with. This includes the natural land of the area, such as tree, waterways, etc. This just refers to the physical aspect of areas since land is unchangeable. Land just refers to, matter of fact, land. It's this is very much self-explanatory. We see land everywhere. We go on the streets. We walk on land. We everywhere is land, and land is permanent. We can't change land. When we are dead, land will still be here, regardless of how we feel. And since land is permanent, and we have land for a period of time, we consider the fact of reward for land to be rent, because rent meaning that you have it temporarily, and obviously time will go and you will die and somebody else will use the land. So the factor reward for land is rent, since it is permanent and it will be far longer here than we will ever be. So let's look at labor now. Labor just refers to the skills of persons and talents of individuals. It just refers to their ability to contribute to the production process. And if you work, you will have a job, you will be rewarded wages. Moving on, the third factor of production is capital, right? It's capital, and we take close right here. We'll answer the questions in a later video. So this refers to equipment utilized in the production process, such as machinery, equipment, etc. And with an example here, you could see that the guy here is utilizing his machinery in order to make products and to make stuff. That is what the production process is about, producing. And if you could look in the image, you see that he's standing on land, and we have labor, and he's utilizing capital. He's utilizing machinery, he's utilizing land, and he's utilizing the knowledge that he has acquired after years of hard work in educative institutions. So the three factors of production is being utilized in the image there. And from that, it is everything for now. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, everyone. And see is the Study Prep Guys Chill Zone. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's start. This will be a basic class on the basic introductory terms in a way. And we'll not just look at it, we will be applying those terms and working past papers. So let's start. So let's look at some very basic terms. I cannot cover everything in this video, but we will make a playlist on every term that you need to know. So let's look at the introduction of terms. So the first term that I would like to look at for our first class officially is logistics. And what exactly are logistics? Logistics is the detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. Logistics refers to the time that you spend calculating the profit to loss ratio. You might want to know how much stocks you have. You might want to know how many more stocks do you need, how, and all of these things. That's what logistics basically is. It's a complex inner working of an organization. It's basically those things that goes on behind the scenes that we don't usually see. So if you have that in mind, we usually see logistics in every business. As a matter of fact, we have an accountant who who tallies the amount of money we make. Essentially, that's logistics. Logistics is just very basic. It is the complex inner workings of the organization. So that's everything for logistics. Now let's look at the question for CSEC 2018 May June. So it says here, this is a question on May June for 2018 for CSEC, Principle of Business, and this could be in the case of OA, Office Administration also. So the question asks, what are two factors that can affect the supply of labor in a business? The first factor is logistics. And why, you might ask? Because you usually have to give an explanation at the end of these things. Just saying logistics is not enough. Since logistics assist in the efficiency of the business, and thus without it, the business will be unable to function properly. Logistics help the business to be efficient. And if we don't have logistics in place, the business will be less efficient because we won't know how many profits we are making, how many stocks we have, and if we have to restock. We won't be able to answer these basic questions. So logistics is of the utmost importance. And secondly, we have the type of business. The type of business, such as sole trader, private and public limited business, etc. The size of the business, depending on the sizability of the business, you will be able to employ a certain amount of people. Obviously, if you're a small business, you won't be able to supply a lot of workers. You won't be able to supply a lot of labor. So that's basic. So the bigger the business, the more amount of workers that you could have. The smaller the business, the less amount of workers you could have. Now let's move on to the factors of production. We'll be looking at three major factors of production in this class: land, labor, and capital. And we'll also be looking at the rewards for the factors of production. Now let's take a look at the first factor of production, which is land. And you might be asking, what is the factor of production? The factors of production are those things that are needed in order for production to take place, essentially. And we have majorly around three. We're looking at the three main factor of production: land. So let's look at land to begin with. This includes the natural land of the area, such as tree, waterways, etc. This just refers to the physical aspect of areas, since land is unchangeable. Land just refers to, matter of fact, land. It's This is very much self-explanatory. We see land everywhere. We go on the streets. We walk on land. We everywhere is land, and land is permanent. We can't change land. When we are dead, land will still be here, regardless of how we feel. And since land is permanent, and we have land for a period of time, we consider the fact of reward for land to be rent, because rent meaning that you have it temporarily. And obviously, time will go and you will die, and somebody else will use the land. So the factor of reward for land is rent, since it is permanent and it will be far longer here than we will ever be. So let's look at labor now. Labor just refers to the skills of persons and talents of individuals. It just refers to their ability to contribute to the production process. And if you work, you will have a job, you will be rewarded wages. Moving on, the third factor of production is capital, right? It's capital, and we take a close right here. We'll answer the questions in a later video. So this refers to equipment utilized in the production process, such as machinery, equipment, etc. And with an example here, you could see that the guy here is utilizing his machinery in order to make products and to make stuff. That is what the production process is about, producing. And if you could look in the image, you see that he's standing on land, and we have labor, and he's utilizing capital. He's utilizing machinery, he's utilizing land, and he's utilizing the knowledge that he has acquired after years of hard work in educative institutions. So the three factors of production is being utilized in the image there. And from that, it is everything for now. Subscribe, hit notification bell, everyone, and see you on. Today we'll be looking at office administration or office documents on the topic of business for office administration. Welcome to the study prep, guys. Chill zone, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and without further ado, let's start. So let's look at the types of office documents in the business. We'll be looking at three main documents. We're looking at itineraries, business letters, and transactional documents. So first of all, let's start off on itineraries. What's itineraries exactly? So, itineraries, as defined by the English dictionary, is a planned route or journey. An example of this is, or a quote is, his itinerary included an official visit to Canada. From the examples in the pictures, we could see that itinerary deals with traveling, but it's more than just traveling. It's about planning, having documents, having your passport, having your these documents in order to basically travel abroad. You need to schedule your appointments. When are you going to leave? And all of these other things. Are you comfortable traveling at this and that time? That's what itinerary are. An example of this is his visits is itinerary including an official visit to Canada, a travel document recording a route or journey. That's another way to put it. Or we will send you an itinerary. When people use the term itinerary, it refers to traveling documents and traveling documentation. So let's look at travel itineraries now. So an example of this is a schedule of events relating to a planned travel. For example, Hanoi, or you might want to spend 6 days, 5 days. A travel itinerary is a schedule of events relating to a planned travel. It generally includes destination to be visited at specific times and means of transportation to move between those distances. An itinerary is a detailed plan for a journey, especially a list of places to visit. Where do you want to go when you're traveling? When will we pick you up so that you could go back home to your home country? All of these things are included in the itinerary. The itinerary is basically all the documents that are needed in order for you to travel. So let's look at how do you prepare an itinerary exactly. Creating a travel itinerary. So the fourth step is to determine your destination and purpose, decide where you're going and why. If it's a There are different types of itinerary. There are business, there are first class, there's second class, there is the thing is domestic where you travel with regular people. Is it a family trip, etc. All of these things. Research the best times to visit based on weather, events, or availability. Are you going within a certain holiday period? All of these things, you need to figure out that within the fourth step. The second step is set your travel dates and the amount of money that you're willing to spend. Your budget. Choose the duration of your trip. Establish a budget that covers transportation, accommodation, food, and activities. You also need to book transportation and accommodation. You need to source flights, train, buses, or rental cars. Choose between hotels. All of these things. Budget plan. Must see attractions where you're going to visit. Your daily activities. You must see attractions and experience, including dining options, leisure activities that you're allowed to do, feasibility and unexpected discoveries or relaxation. Where will you relax? All of those things. You need to choose a budget and your travel dates within the second step. The third step is to check important documents, like, for example, requirements for your passport, visa, of travel permits, and in order to restore travel restrictions, vaccinations or insurance needs. Create a detailed schedule outlining each day's plan, including times and locations. Consider travel time between destinations. Pack. You need to make sure within the third step, you need to make sure that you have the necessary documents in order to promote or to make sure that for any damages caused, you have a coverage in case anything bad happens. You have a recovery document, for example. The fourth step is to prepare and make a checklist of essential items based on weather. What are you gonna bring? Are you gonna bring essential documents? You need to bring essential You need to make sure that you have you have the right equipments, and that's the final step. You just need to make sure that you have the right equipments. You have everything that you need in terms of clothing, in terms of fashion, and all of these other things. So that's how you create a travel itinerary. So now let's look into a business letter. So a business letter is a professional format letter that is sent by one company to another. It is a written communication used in formal business transactions, containing information about the business transaction, agreement, or inquiry. All right, inquiry. Business letter can be used for professional. A business letter could come in a lot of forms, but a business letter is usually between persons or it could be in the form of employment if there's not a business letter for employment. But, however, a business letter must address a specific person or group, and it needs to have a clear and brief aim by persuasion, concluding with a specific goal. That's the main goal of a business letter. It needs to be formal. It does not need to be informal. That's the gist of it. So you need to have a clear and brief aim. You need to state why you're going to send this letter, state your point, state your view, and state why you're sending this letter. It needs to be to specificness. It cannot just be to anyone. A business letter must be business related, as the name suggests. So now let's look at a format of a business letter. So in the example, we have the heading, we have the inside address, and then you have the salutation, we have the body. Let me just give you an example. This is just an example. So for the signature, you sing sincerely yours. You state your name, you state your position, You need to think your salutation and the body. You need to have the basic three body paragraph. You need to have a heading, and the heading usually includes the inside address. Usually includes the name of the person to whom you're sending it to, their street, and you could also include their address, the business name within the inside address. You could also include their business if you know their business. But in the case of dear Mister, if you know the person name, you could be very specific in this area with a salutation and actually include the person's full name. But if you do not know the person's name, you could utilize for whom it may concern or something like that. But you need to be very flexible within the salutation. However, do not go off straight when you're going to write your body, your introductory sentences within the letter. You need to be very brief. You need to state why you're going to send this letter. You do not need to state anything excessive. So that's the format of a business letter. Now let's look into an invoice. So an invoice is a list of goods sent or services provided with a statement of the sum for these, a bill. An invoice is basically a bill. If you purchase this and this and this and this amount of goods, you need to pay this amount. It's basically a sublimation of all your transactions that you have to pay for. So that's about it. And this is an example of an invoice that you would usually find at a store. You could find this anywhere. You usually find this at any business stop. This is an example of an invoice. So moving on, let's look into what we consider to be a receipt. So a receipt or a receipt is a written record that shows someone has received something such as goods, services, or a payment. Um, when you buy a shirt at the store, the cashier will give you a receipt. There's some examples of some instances. If you pay for a meal at a restaurant, you will receive a receipt showing that yes, this guy paid, this guy received, this guy paid for it. However, the big question is, what is the function of a receipt? Why do they give us a receipt to begin with? So, a receipt is a written acknowledgement that something of value has been transferred from one party to another. It serves several purposes, including providing information to customers or donors, documenting purchasing, and assisting with internal accounting. Receipts are used to consumers from vendors and service providers used in business to business transactions or to provide with banking or financial market trades. It's basically a stamp that you bought this good and it literally says that this guy made his purchase. It's a proof of your purchase. It's evidence, basically. Usually within the business world, if you make a transaction or you do a transaction, you will receive a receipt. Or if you're for example, if you are working with a business, or somebody send you to buy something, they may want to see a receipt to see how the amount of money that they paid and stuff like that. So that's everything for this video. um Now you will answer this question down in the comments below. So you could type in the comments below, but this is some questions for you. Now let's look into the fourth question. What is an itinerary and why is it used? Explain the key components of a travel itinerary. um what information is typically included in a business itinerary? Describe the questions for OA questions and answers. And this is by the study prep guys. Chill zone, chill, relax, and let's start. So the agenda of this video is for looking into logistics a bit. We did look at logistics. We did look at the types of business, factors of production. But for this video, we'll be looking at tips when answering questions, and we're looking at some work attributions that are necessary for any job that you are implying for. So this is a question on logistics, which is from the year 2018, paper 2, May, June. It's on more of work attributions. We did answer 2018, paper 2, May, June on logistics on the last class. But for this video, we answering the question, what are some of the major characteristics of a receptionist? You could shape that differently. But the question is, what are some work attributions that are necessary for a receptionist? So the possible answers for the characteristics of a receptionist is excellent communication skills, the ability to communicate or to actually understand the person needs. Receptionists are in contact with people by phone, email, or in person, and they need to have that ability in order to share information. You need to have multitasking ability. Reception handles multiple tasks, including answering phones. Social skills, organization, and technical skills are some of the characteristics of a receptionist. Now let's answer another question. What are two functions of the human resource department? So functions the human resource department include career planning, include um, planning, counseling, and basically giving that information towards persons who are now going into the job market. Human resource planning, this is the primary function of human resource management, and this is to basically make sure that they have the necessary resources in the work environment or the business that they are attending. Recruitment and selection, the ability to facilitate the movement or the employment of persons, are also one of their major functions. But what I would consider to be an extremely important role that the human or the HR has is the performance management, making sure that everyone is performing to a certain degree in order to maintain efficiency in the business, essentially. So now let's look at how do you answer Q&A questions in paper 2. So the first thing that you need to know is know your material in advance. If you could basically study, basically understand the concept, and you need to anticipate common questions, like for example questions that usually repeat, questions that usually that is usually always there, that sometimes always repeat. For example, in social studies we have the idea of individual, family, and society, and regional integration, and these terms. So if you have the baseline of those basic terms, you need to make sure that you understand those terms fully, because it always repeat all the time for CSEC. You need to rehearse your responses. This means working past papers, doing past papers, and these things will equip you with the necessary skills in order to be, or in order to answer the question, because you know how to answer it. You know the best way to answer it because of practice. Now look at answering questions for CSEC tips. And this is just in addition to the tips that we look at just now. You need to analyze the question type. Do they is the question worth 2 marks? Is the question worth 4 marks? If it's worth 4 marks, you will obviously have to give a longer explanation. Analyze the question type. Apply the PEE method. This is very important. Point, explain, example. You state your point, you elaborate on that point, and then you give an example of that point, and you will get your marks if you could do that. Use business language and terminology. Don't use subsidized language. Don't say um, an individual business. Instead, say a sole proprietor business or a sole trader business. Use business term. Also, look at time management. Answer utilize like 2 to 3 minutes per question. And you need to answer the question based on the context given. If they said Joanne is working at this business, utilize, and we're going to give an answer now. Utilize Joanne. Use her name when you're answering in order to make to fit the context of the question. And finally, you need to go through a little bit of reviewing, proofread, make sure your answer sounds sensible, and if it's making sense. So that's everything for this video, guys. It's a very sharp video, so subscribe, hit the notification bell, and see you on the later video. You could check me out at patreon.com at the Study Prep Guy. You could even check me out at the Study Prep Guy group chat and my personal email there, and also you have my Discord. So my other channel includes the Study Prep Guy, where we make CSEC videos, also the Study Prep Guy React, where we work the latest past papers, and we have the Study Prep Guy Business, that has a full audiobook on every business term that you need to know if you want to understand the business basics. So guys, thank you. See you on the later video. Subscribe, and later guys. Stay chill, study, and prep up later. Alright, welcome back to Study Prep Guys channel. Today we'll be working some CSEC OA past papers. So this is live, so let's start this without further ado. So for our first action today, we'll be looking at the OA pass paper on the year 2019. So let's start that. So the first question on the list is that you are responsible for planning the firm's annual general meeting. There are two attendees who have been designated ex officio members. State the responsibility of the ex officio members at the general meeting. One of their major responsibilities is general counseling. General counseling of new office recruits. So general counseling of new office recruits is one of the responsibilities. That would be number one. For number two, one of their other major responsibilities is suggestions in training um, new recruits. And even though these two points here are very familiar in a lot of senses, they are not exactly so familiar. So first of all, they're not exactly familiar. Um, they're not so exactly similar, but they're quite different. But if you look at it from a first glance, it does look extremely familiar, but it's not that exactly similar. So let's look back at the question exactly. So if you look at the question, it says state the responsibilities of the ex officio members at the general meeting. The ex officio members, let's take a highlight at what that terms actually means. I isn't highlighted for some. Oh, that's erased. What's up with me, guys? I'm using erase instead of that. Let's look at the term ex officio members. Officio members. So if you look at the general definition, it says an ex officio member. If you look at the general definition right here, if you could see, it says an ex officio member is a member of a body such as a board, committee, or council who is part of it by virtue of holding another office. So they are generally a member of a body such as a board, committee, or council. And if they are part of a council, their main responsibilities, or one of the main responsibilities, is general counseling of new office recruits, and they need to also suggest suggestions in new training recruits, and they have to generally be involved in orchestrating the events of the council of the general meeting. So one of their major responsibilities or is generally orchestrating the events of the general meeting. They are the persons who will even call the meeting to begin with. So they are responsible in a large morality of senses. So we have that definition out of the way. And with that, we could basically have the gist of it right off the bat. So moving on, let's go back to our next question. Um, let's look into state two important features of a hotel you should consider when making reservation for staff members for traveling overseas. Two important features is that it is affordable. You need to make sure that the hotel is generally affordable. Make sure that the hotel is generally affordable. This is like the number one reason or the number one characteristic of any hotel. So they are generally asking, state two important features of a hotel that you should consider when making reservations for staff, members, traveling overseas on business. You have to make sure that it is affordable. Let's add a little bit more information there. You have to make sure it's affordable or in the capacity of the budget. So that's two things you need to really take into like major consideration. You need to make sure that the hotel is generally affordable or it has the capacity to of the for the budget, because usually within business trip you will have a budget, you will have amount of money that you can spend, um and you need to stay within that zone. Secondly, as first, the second thing that you really need to take into consideration is that it has to be comfortable, or to make sure that the hotel is of adequate comfortability. So those are two major features with it that you should consider. So yes, let's move on. So it says here, it says Yannicki Brooks was elected as the new secretary for the Students Uprising Club. Members of the club, draft notice agenda of a meeting scheduled to be held at school. I'll look at this in a later video, but for now, we'll not answer this one. We're only answering the questions relating to conceptualization of terms. I will answer this in a later video. I promise you guys that. So let's look at section 2. It says answer all questions in this section. State to staff evaluation appraisal criteria that might be used for employee performance assessments through an organization. Um, State to staff evaluation generalization testings, generalization of tests. So that's one thing that they could do. So it says there's state to staff evaluation appraisal criteria. Let's look at the term criteria majorly. Criteria is the standard of what you're doing. Criteria means in relation to standard. So criteria, when you hear the term criteria, it's mainly to do with standards. So they're asking, how do they actually even assess staff evaluation? Let's take a look at that right now, because I really want to give it accurate data. How do we assess staff evaluation? So it says share the expectation and set goals, create a performance file track. Let's take this point. This point looks very interesting. Yes, so let's look at this. I just put that right here. So create a performance file to track contributions. This could be like in relation to like what were your tasks that was accomplished in a week. So that's an example of that, and I think it had a recent contributions with that in recent days with the incident of Elon Musk. Let's take a look at that, guys. So what's video again? Elon Musk um, Elon Musk letters to federal employees. Probably spell that wrong, but anyways. So if you look at this video here, if you look at this is something that is
We have new info.
if you look at this is something that happened a little while back with Elon Musk giving all federal workers 48 hours to explain what they did last week.
Information tonight about those emails sent to federal workers today saying, explain what you did at work or lose your jobs. That directive coming from Doge and Elon Musk. So here's a look at the email. It says, please reply with 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week. It has a deadline of Monday, 11:59.
So from the example, you could see like a basic education towards like what they did do within that last week, if you understand what I'm trying to say. And from that, we could see like there's a basic adjudication towards like for example, they ask what the hell you guys or what the hell you're doing within that month. And from that, there was like a basic assessment basically of what they did. They asked for a reply of 5 things that they did within the 48 hours, and if they did not reach that performance standard, they will be fired. And that's like a basic idea that um that was that coming to mind really. when we think of it in that sense. So that's something very interesting that they did back then. But anyways, let's go back to the questions. So define the term induction as used by human resource professionals. Let's look at that. What does the term induction mean? It says this is the action or process. It says induction is the action or process of inducting someone to post or organize. Induction into membership of formal introduction to a new job or position. So the induction, that the term utilized by the human resource professional, is the introduction to a new job. This is like where they teach you or they show you like what you're actually getting yourself into. So if you are applying for a new job or you're in a new job, the human resource person would usually, in most cases, like give you a heads up of what you're getting yourself into drastically. So let's just put it right there, what you're getting yourself into. So that's about it, what you get yourself into. So we'll stop right up there today, guys. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and see you on the later video. Welcome everyone to the Study Prep Guys channel. Welcome to the Study Prep Guys 2.0. Subscribe, hit notification bells, and let's start. So we're just discussing a very big term, a very exciting term, I like to say, in the social studies syllabus. We're discussing it. We're just talking about it. You could tell me your ideas, your thoughts about it in the comments below. So the idea that we're looking at, or the big concept I would like to say, is regional integration, right? So this is a very big topic in CSEC. It's a very huge topic, and that's why I'm here today to break it down in the most basic of senses, right? So what exactly is regional integration? I'll give you the definition, and then I'll give you the explanation. So the definition of what is regional integration is the facilitation of free trade between countries in order to promote development. That's about it. That's the most simple definition that I could give, or anyone could give, as a matter of fact. So we have the gist of it. We have the understanding of what exactly is regional integration. That's the basic definition. Now, let's look at some very interesting terms that you very much need to know before you even understand regional integration. So imports and exports. Exports is the giving out of our resources. Imports is the bringing in of resources. That's very much two basic terms. And if you understand those two terms, you basically don't already have the gist of it, right? But something that you may not know between in the terms of exporting or expediting resources, we have something called trade barriers. We have something called trade barriers. Trade barriers are those things that block us, or the things that limit our trading arrangement between other countries. That's what are trade barriers essentially. But the two types of trade barriers that, or three as a matter of fact, the three types of trade barriers that I will be discussing for this video are: number one, tariffs; number two, quotas; and number three, preferential tariff. So what are tariff exactly? I'll give you an example, and then you could think about it. So in the country Barbados, I'm just using a hypothetical situation. To say Barbados have they lack, or they have a deficit in the amount of bauxites within their country, right? And they want to basically have more bauxite. So they go and trade with China. They ask China that, yo, we need more bauxite, and let's think up an arrangement. But China says, No, let me put in a trade barrier essentially, or a duty on that bauxite. So Barbados wants to buy 8,000 worth of bauxite. That's what they want. $8,000 worth of bauxite. Let's just use that for now. They want to purchase $8,000 of bauxite. But China puts a duty on that, and they say here what's going to happen. We're going to 100% put duties on this good, or tariffs, right? They want to put 100% on that. So since they put 100% duty on that, you will have to pay $16,000 to bring that good into your country now. So it's a tax on imports. That's what tariffs are there. It's a tax on imports. You know, we pay taxes for a light bill, for water bill, for all these other bills. That's what tariffs are, but it's more of an on an international scale. So you have that idea in mind. What are preferential tariffs now? It's still tariffs, but it's a different term. Preferential tariffs, however, are tariffs on goods, or tariffs on specific goods. I'll give you a real life example now. If you look at the situation in the United States, or the trade war going on currently right now between the two economies of America and China, we could see that there is a preferential tariff. If you look at the United States of America, we could see that the United States is doing something called preferential tariff and reciprocal tariff. But we're just discussing it on this video. So what exactly are reciprocal tariffs, and what exactly are preferential tariffs? Preferential tariffs are tariffs on specific goods. For example, tariffs on phones, and no tariffs on agriculture. Reciprocal tariffs are what you tariff us, we will tariff you back in return. So if you put 10% tariffs on us, we will put 10% tariffs on you. That's what reciprocal tariffs are. So we have everything down to mind on what tariff is. You could tell me your thoughts in the comments below. That's what tariffs are essentially. We have the gist of it in mind. So that's what tariffs are. So more on to the discussion. We have what tariffs are. We understand what regional integration is. But still, you're not seeing the whole picture yet. That's not the whole picture. There are more terms, there are more concepts. We'll go through them. And so there are two major concepts that you need to know now before we move on, before you could understand regional integration 100%. So we're looking at two more terms, and we'll close out the video. If you could understand these two more terms, after we've within the explanation, you understand trade, you understand trading, you understand what exactly is regional integration. So let me explain that now. So the other term that you need to understand is something called trade liberalization, and this is very basic. Trade liberalization is just removal of trade barriers in order to promote development. That's what trade liberalization actually is. That's everything for that, matter of fact. And the third type, or the final concept that I would like you to understand, are what we consider to be unions, or unitary trade organizations. Oh my God, sorry for that. So we have organizations like, or forums, or what we consider to be international trading bodies, like the ACS. And then we have the OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. A lot of you know something called NATO. A lot of you know the European Union. A lot of you know what is CARIFETA. Some of you know what is the CARICOM, and these other stuff. These are what we call international trading bodies, right? And you might ask the question, why do they actually form it? They form international trading bodies in order to facilitate development, and in order to promote effective development. So why did they form CARICOM? Why is CARICOM here? Why the hell is CARICOM here? It's very basic, as a matter of fact. Why is CARICOM here? They are here in order to promote development. But why? That's a big question. CARICOM is as a number of small countries that band together. It's basically islands. I wouldn't say they're islands because I don't want to seem rude to my audience, but they're basically islands. Some bigger than the rest, but If we look in comparison to more bigger countries or more developed countries like France, like America, like Russia, and these countries, we are quite small and we are quite at a disadvantage. And the founders of CARICOM figured, yeah, we need to form a unicenter or a unisense body in order to fight against these world superpowers. And that's why CARICOM was formed. It was not only formed for that, however, they were formed in order to promote development fast through unitary policies. And that's why we have CSEC. CSEC was formed through CARICOM in order to promote fast, effective development. So with all of that, with what we understand is tariffs, you understand that. We explain tariff. Secondly, we explain what are unitary markets or unitary trade markets. And we understand trade liberalization. If you could understand the gist of that, you understand what regional integration is. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what you're seeing, if you like the content and you feel educated, subscribe, hit the notification bell. See you guys on the later video.